completing the front unit, the next step is to add the mesh pockets to the front and the interior parts of the tech organizer bag. And so the mesh pockets are going to be on the front and then on both the interior front and the interior back. So this part of the pattern just walks through the process of adding the binding to the top of the pieces of mesh and then adding them to each of the pockets. For the front unit, you just want to make sure that you flip that back and add it separately to the interior, and the exterior, so you're not sewing through both layers. So first we're going to look at the binding itself and adding that to the pockets. Two of the pockets are the same size, and then the interior front one is a little bit taller. Exterior front, excuse me, is a little bit taller. So we're going to take this binding and press it in half, and then we're going to attach it to the mesh. So I'm going to clip this on there. It's a little bit wider than the mesh because the mesh tends to stretch, so just add a little bit of forgiveness in there. So I generally clip at the beginning and then at the end, and then add a couple in the middle here. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch here and come back and flip it over. Okay, so I have stitched it 1/4 inch from the top edge, and then I pressed it upward. Now this mesh and the seam allowance kind of tends to want to creep downward, but you want it to stay up. And then we're going to flip it over, and then you're going to fold it down over that seam allowance until it meets the other edge of the binding, and then we'll just clip it into place here. And after you've done that, you're going to stitch right along the edge about 1/8 inch from the fold, and that'll go through all layers, and that will catch that seam allowance inside. I'm just catching this so it doesn't keep folding over, but as I'm stitching it, I'll be tucking those ends in there because they want to peek out. All right, so I have gone ahead and stitched that pocket binding on, and then we'll repeat that with the other two pockets, and then the next step is to add these onto the tech organizer bag, and we'll just center it on there, and then you want to just make sure this is even and pin it in place. And what we're going to do is we're going to baste around the edge, and then we're going to find the center and stitch down the center with a double line. But once I get this clipped on, I like to just take a ruler and make sure that these are even, so the bag doesn't end up coming out wonky. So that's 3/4 of an inch. And you see that it extends over the edge of the bag, and that's okay. We'll trim off the excess later. You don't want to stretch it, but you just want to make sure that it lies nice and flat. And then on this side, we've got, need to move that one down a little bit. So I'm going to pin that, clip it in place again. Alright, we'll just add a couple more of these clips to keep it from moving when I bring it over to the sewing machine. Okay. Okay, I've sewn this onto the front of the bag. Just to recap, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to baste it on, and making sure that these sides are even distance up to the zipper, and then stitching a double line just to add a little reinforcement, starting down here at the bottom center up to the top and then back down again, and that adds the mesh pocket onto the front. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing, add the binding onto the mesh and then add the pocket onto the interior part of interior front of the bag, and then also to the interior back of the bag.